And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to present to you a behind-the-scenes all-access tour of the seamless process behind Lily Factor videos. Ding! To draw as if you're getting a snapshot of a scene that you should expect to see actually come to life, whether that be through animation or through animation. But wait, there's more. Watch now and see a new drawing process. It's the Lily Factor. Ding! Throughout this tour, we'll explore how I create art videos, from setting up shots to clip transitions and effects in editing, Easter eggs, and piecing together the story puzzle. But before I can do any of that, I start with setting up shots. Because when you start to peel back the layers of the original video footage, you'll see that the original shot versus the final shot is very different. For some videos that are more project focused than video focused, sometimes you just set up the stand and start recording and worry about the details and editing. But for videos where you want more beautiful shots, you do some crazy things to get there, like sit on a stool squished up next to a Christmas tree. Regardless of my intention behind my shots, I use an adjustable tripod to point my camera where I want it to see. And then if I'm not using that and I want more intentional close-up shots, then I'll do a handheld shot, and you'll know it if the camera's wobbling a little more in my footage. For that, I use kind of a selfie stick thing that I adjust two different ways, although admittedly there have been times where I've just simply held the camera myself without anything else attached. But touching back on what I said earlier, when some projects don't lend themselves to a variety of camera angles, like this one where we're dealing with a reflective surface, as you can see, there's not a lot of camera angles in there. So how do I make this footage look interesting? That's where I rely on editing. If I'm not using the original audio, the first thing I do with my footage is I mute it. You never want to accidentally leave some unmuted footage when you're doing voiceover. Then I start condensing my footage. I cut and delete pieces of footage that I won't need because it doesn't fit into the final story puzzle. I don't get crazy with editing when I'm cutting clips, but there's some clips I may zoom in on to remind myself why I saved that footage, so I don't accidentally delete it, because you never know what you may overlook. Once I've reduced the footage to pretty much the necessities, I start doing the nitpicky editing, adding a whole lot of transform keyframes, and this is where I start to focus in on what I want you to see. There's a little rule I made for myself that I like to abide by with this analogy in mind, is that if you're on an airplane and there's somebody seated in front of you or across from you, wherever, that you can see what they're watching on their TV screen or their phone or whatever, is it visually interesting enough to make you continue to look over at them to try and figure out what they're watching? In other words, is what my footage portraying interesting enough to stand alone, even without audio or voiceover explanation? So what I like to do to fulfill that idea is add a lot of transform keyframes to keep the footage constantly moving. I'm constantly making your eyes do some exercise to keep it interesting, and then zoom in on things that I want you to see, that I want to make perfectly clear, so that you're seeing my art through my eyes, even if the camera didn't always capture it. So I willingly decrease my pixel count to zoom in on those details. I'm also trying to avoid jump clips, because I don't want you to feel art gypped that I've robbed you of 5 minutes of my drawing and you're like, wait, how and when did she draw that? By editing it in this way, you don't even know what you missed. I also learned to do this because I learned in a film course that the jump clips is considered bad editing in film, even though it's done widely in social media. So it's something I thought, well, how can I avoid this, even though I only have one camera? I know, it looks like a different angle if you zoom in. It's never been good. It's art too hard, unmotivated, can't improve, can't get a job, can't make a living. Hold on a second. Once I've got all my basic editing in, partial settings, transitions, and such, I start to hone in on the little details, voiceover, music, especially the intros. More often than not, I pretty much have the intros finished before I've even really finished condensing the footage, because introductions are very important to me. It's that elevator pitch. In this example of an intro, I use a tremble animation and some chromatic aberration, some zooming in and zooming out in the footage, a bunch of voiceover all overlaid over each other to create this sense of intensity to go with the theme in the video. And I also have this part where I talk about going back to the past in this footage, and I use some settings to zoom in and turn it to grayscale to reflect that. So everything you're going to see following this is a lot of examples taken out where I use editing to help communicate the story. For this, I tease an animation that I had done. So I start to zoom in on it so you can't fully see it, reverse the footage, use a zoom in transition to kind of just kickstart that intro, kickstart that title for the video. This video project taught me some skills when I had to make lemonade with some of this footage. Here's the original shot that we see here. A lot of information, doesn't really communicate anything very well. I had to zoom in this footage, duplicate the footage, and zoom some other items in so you could see that I was changing the color of the character in the footage and adjusting the toon shading to it. And you'll soon see more examples of that. In fact, this technique is how I'm showing you the editing right now, since the editing software I use is VLLO on the iPhone, so everything's shot vertically, not YouTube horizontal style, so I had to get pretty creative with even the editing for how I edit videos. But in this footage example, where I had to duplicate the footage and make the color picker bigger so you could see that I was making his shoes red. And then for this intro, while I couldn't recover all the footage, I can still give an example of how I did this neat effect of overlaying the footage on top of other footage. I used a blending mode, set it to hard light at 100%, and overlaid it over the original footage to make it look like a car was somehow driving over my intro and my footage. Some editing tricks happen by accident too. In this footage here, you see how I have the duplicates of the drawing to the left and the right to give it a bit of a background. I was trying to recreate that in this footage, but that happened. So for that New Year video, I was trying to give an interesting background in the footage, but before I did that, I zoomed in on the drawing to try and make it look interesting, but it still wasn't interesting to me, so I duplicated the footage twice and shifted the duplicates to the left and to the right and lightened their opacity to create this background, right? Well, I never turned off the keyframe that was zooming the footage in. So what happens is I hit play and the footage was being told to return to its original location and zoom in all at the same time. And now that I've talked about some editing, I'm going to talk about Easter eggs. These are the things I do to keep myself entertained when filming and editing. For the New Year drawing video, this was in December, so I stuffed a little candy cane to the side where my pencil would be held in my iPad case. And then the next day of filming, wait a second, what is that? Wait, what's that, freeze frame? Hang on, zoom in. Oh, what's that little thing there? Yeah, so for the next round of footage for that New Year drawing, this little guy makes an appearance multiple times in the footage. And he kind of has a creepy face, which was part of the fun of that. Now in the submerged video, you might notice I leave some intentional wide shots throughout the video. Every time there's a wide shot, the things on my desk, well, they're different than they were before, because while my editing may be making you look at what I'm drawing, you never know how I change the background, so start paying attention. Like for this video, I'm drawing Sonic and Blaze, which the figures are actually looking at me drawing them, and at some point are posed exactly like how I'm drawing them. Also, the scene in which they're placed in is projecting on my 3DS, as well as later on, the villain that they're facing is also projecting on the 3DS. Then for the wind battle in one of my drawing outside videos, that sound effect was made by yours truly. Want to know how I did it? Now for the final piece of the story puzzle, the story. Technically, it's the first and the last piece when it comes to making these videos. For me, there's always a story behind whatever art video I'm sharing. I always had something going on, some sort of storyline between how I made the drawing or what was going on while I was making the drawing. Like for example, this one. I made this drawing October 30th of 2023. It was after I had finished making my animated intro. I was wanting to change my profile picture, update my banner and stuff for my YouTube channel, and this was a scrapped profile picture concept. This was one of the first times I had approached this coloring technique, which I've used quite a few times in some of the latest art videos I've shared, where I start sketching in one color and then I sketch in another color and just start refining details all on top of it. It's a very messy process, but it's a really fun process. I was originally planning to document my channel redesign process, but I never did, and this was one of those things that got left in the lurch, so I decided to recycle the footage for this video to talk about how I craft the story of these videos. Typically, I try to have an idea for the theme of the videos in mind before I get into the video, and actually a very important part of the process for crafting the story of these videos is music. I like to select the music I use for my art videos before I do pretty much anything else, and I try to pick music that I feel like complements the video and the artworks itself. And that actually helps me in terms of editing, because then I edit things to synchronize with the music. Sometimes I make art videos because I have an idea for a video I want to make in mind, and a lot of the time I just have a drawing I want to do and I document the process and decide to make a video for it. Once I have the story behind the drawing, the theme in mind, the music to help aid how I communicate the story in editing, everything's put together and all that is left is voiceover. I always do the voiceover just full-on improvised, where I use all those elements in mind and I start to tell the story using the footage I have in front of me as visual aid, because editing everything together, in my mind I'm already thinking of how I'm going to tell the story. So then it's left to the voiceover to do that. I've only ever scripted an art video of mine once, and it was my first New Year redraw video, and since then I knew I did not want to do that anymore. It takes a lot of time and it's just not as comfortable for me, even though it is a little awkward to like wing it in voiceover. It's just not as natural reading off of a script. And overall, while I like to push myself outside of my comfort zone for art videos, the main purpose in which I do these and why I started this channel in the first place is to have fun, to document my process, learn and experiment, and hope that it's entertaining and inspiring for others. They can learn things, factor in their own lives. It's all just supposed to be fun. I've been filming art videos for a long time, even before this channel. I enjoyed just recording little time lapses of myself drawing, so I figured it would also be enjoyable to know how I put these videos together. At the end of the day, the process for how I make these videos may change, but the love of making art videos stays the same. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and may God bless you in your life and your art. Bye!